everybody. This is Tracy Malone from NarcissistAbuseSupport.com. I am an international coach for victims of narcissistic abuse. And today I am going to talk with a friend of mine, Sheri Heller. We have an amazing topic, and she wrote a great article on medium.com, and I was like, we need to talk about this because narcissists sabotage people's ambitions, their dreams, their talents, their achievements. You know it. They took away your job. They took away what your passions were. So whether you were an adult child of a narcissist, that they took away something when you were younger and said, no, you'll never do that again. They sabotage you out of jealousy and out of anger and all kinds of things. They need to be better than you, so you can't outshine them. So if you have lost something from a narcissist, this is a particular conversation I think you'll find very helpful. So let's go welcome Sheri, and we'll learn more about this topic and learn about her in just a little while. Welcome, Sheri. I am so excited to see you.
Great to see you too, Tracy.
I love seeing you, and I love your freaking hair. I mean, I really
Oh.
think a bottle, it's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Every time I see it, I'm just so happy. So you wrote an article on Medium, right? And it has to do with narcissists sabotaging people's ambitions, destroying their careers, their talents, their achievements. What was your motivation to write this?
Well, the motivation emanated from my own personal history, and I think that was reignited by the group that I am facilitating for survivors of narcissistic abuse. And I see some people in the group have been derailed from their careers in different ways. My situation, it was more from a parental narcissist, specifically my father, who really was instrumental in sabotaging my pursuit of acting as a child. And for me, that was a particularly mortifying loss because there was so much trauma in the home with my father's narcissism and my mother's schizophrenia. And this was a place where I actually was able to achieve creative expression. And I was very, very shy, and I was even a selective mute as a young child. So to find my voice was tremendously therapeutic and healing. And I, in hindsight, I could see that he saw that it empowered me. So that's a big threat for any narcissist. And so one day when my mother brought me to class, I was not allowed in. It was very humiliating. He just stopped payments. And that was the end of it. I never returned. And that was a very eye-opening kind of trajectory to examining the dynamic with my father and the way he needed to leverage himself with people. Mm-hmm. So across the board, I see it even, with people in my life on a personal level who come from narcissistic family systems, or my clients that I work with, whether it's in the public sector, working in the marketplace, or whether it's in the arts. The narcissist, whether they're a malignant narcissist, a vindictive narcissist, a vulnerable narcissist, they see the other's talents and achievements as a means to covet something that they want for themselves. And they also see it as a threat to their domination. So there are many layers to this, because they want what you have. And then they also want to make sure that you don't have these strengths, these accomplishments, because that will take away from their ability to control and manipulate.
Right. It gives them power.
Yeah.
To take away from you what you're so excited to have. It's like they got the control.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm taking that away.
Yes, they need to take it away because they're insatiable. They need to feed their parasitic predilections, and you are strictly there to be objectified, to be malleable supply. They can, in the idealization stage, when you are identified as a source of supply, of course, what you possess with can be vicarious stature. Inevitably, however, the need to punish always will kick in, because human fallibility, any kind of shortcoming, any kind of need, is a tremendous injury to the narcissist. It induces a level of rage that's inconceivable. And so destroying that, which brings anyone a degree of pleasure, is a driving force
Mhm.
for the narcissist. And they will triangulate people, in your orbit to do that. And there are all kinds of strategies and tactics to make it seem like they're aligned with you and they're supporting you, when in fact what they're doing is they are maneuvering to pull out the rug from underneath you.
Yeah, yeah. I had, my career was given up for my husband, and I was sold,
Hmm.
you don't have to work thing, and that's
Hmm.
one of my biggest regrets. So I lost, 10 years of my life, and it was a software engineer. You can't go back
Hmm.
not
Right.
knowing, not keeping up with it for 10 years. And so, that was taken away. But as we were planning and thinking about this talk, I also flashed back to, I was loved baking,
Mhm.
love baking. I went to the new school in New York City to learn how to bake things, and I made
Mhm.
cakes and masterful things that made news.
Wow.
And my parents would look at them and say, well, they look pretty, but they don't taste that good. And
Right.
I
Right.
just
Yeah.
sit there and go, yeah, well, don't eat it, anybody. It's pretty, but don't eat it. Meanwhile, I'm like trained in making desserts for restaurants all over town, but they would just dig and just sit there and
Yes.
oh,
Yeah. The indoctrination.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's so, yeah, if you're not the golden child where you're encouraged in order to be vicarious supply to, and then you're controlled completely, because you have to follow the path that is set forth by the narcissist. You're not allowed to individuate or to exist for yourself. But yeah, I remember when I even entered college, I was so shocked by the feedback I got from my professors. I really thought I was stupid.
mhm,
Um, and I had professors encouraging me to go into honors programs, and then I went on to graduate school, and that, and also being in trauma informed treatment really helped me to have a accurate reflection of myself and my capability. But I was so beaten down by the constant trivializing of my gifts.
mhm, yeah.
So even, not even being celebrated or championed, but the breaking down, the dehumanization that children of narcissistic parents go through. So it's the same thing, it's different in terms of the complex trauma that you go through developmentally in a narcissistic family, but people who are involved with narcissists, whether they marry or they become romantically involved or they work for someone, a CEO. I mean, I've got stories there that'll blow your mind. People who actually had death threats leveled against them. And then we're talking about psychopaths. So, as we know, it's a spectrum disorder. So when you get into the rigid end of the spectrum where there is narcissistic pathology, um, it doesn't matter what the situation is, the narcissist must tear you down so that they can extract what they need from you.
Mhm,
And so any kind of career, any kind of gift, accomplishment is a threat. And also it could be co-opted. It could be nicely utilized as their own. Suddenly they did this. I have clients who were photographers. One guy, his father said it was his photography. Um,
oh,
so, there's no respect of intellectual property. I mean, everything belongs to the abuser.
and then there's competition, right? There's this envy, there's this jealousy, and
Mhm.
competition. And so, when you
Yeah.
said photography, my mouth went, oh, you know, I had a dark room growing up. I was a pretty darn good photographer. And then when we moved here, my husband had lots of cameras, but his work was okay. But we went to a photography club, and you submitted, like, it was birds this month, and you bring a bird picture,
Mhm.
And the best ones were voted by the 40 people in the room, and then they went in the newspaper. And I was always making it in the newspaper, and he was so jealous. And his reaction to that was, I'm going to buy a better camera. I'm going to buy a $20,000 camera. I'm going to buy a this. I'm going to,
Mhm.
it was always that, but he didn't have the,
Yeah.
but it didn't matter. But then he was so jealous and he made it so horrible. I gave up photography. I have
Right.
not picked it up. And he's been gone for 10 years. I'm like, you know what? It's just
That's a
like
shame.
it took it away from me and the passion's gone. I've moved on. It's
Mm.
something else. But
Yeah.
we tend to take things again and be competitive. Like if you were talking about playing the guitar, then all of a sudden they play the guitar,
Yeah.
they take your light and take it away from you. So there's so many ways they can like destroy people's passions and
Hmm.
love for something. And this is why we have to talk about this, because I don't think you and I know a single client that has not lost something, whether it's even
Yeah.
themselves or like we're talking about passions. They don't even know who they are anymore because
Right. Right.
are stolen and you're not allowed to do what you loved, or you're put down every time you do it and you go, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. We
Hmm.
are trained, we're groomed into acquiescing to what they want us to do just to keep the peace and not have a fight that day. And then again, another little piece of your soul is sucked away.
Yeah. And it's so true. And this is why so many victims of narcissistic abuse end up feeling like imposters.
Mm.
Even people who had some degree of secure attachment growing up and then later encountered a narcissist feel that they lost sight of who they were. They don't have an accurate sense of perception because of the cognitive dissonance, all the gaslighting, and being derailed, even when someone intrinsically knows that they're an artist, for example. Or I had a client who I was sharing with you about who was an actress and grew up, both her parents were musicians. She met her husband he was also an actor, and they met in graduate school. She was fully scholarship. He always told her she was lucky that she got the lead. So she went on believing that even when she made it on Broadway, she was just lucky. Um, and a lot of the therapy had to dismantle that insidious indoctrination, and for her to get back on track to try to realize what was her birthright. She was really meant to be this creative artist um, that she was, and yet you can't take back those years. So once you're derailed, and he would, when they had a child, then he would say, I'll be there and you can go for an audition. And she would always get callbacks, and then he would of course not show up. So he would sabotage her efforts to actualize a career that I believe, given everything that I know about her, would have been highly successful. She was already on that track in spite of what he was trying to do. So, there are so many things here. There's the envy, the hate that is ignited by someone having something that they don't have, and them gleaning some admiration because they're addicted to being admired. They need to have that constant worship. The need for attention is just insatiable. So the target is never allowed to share the limelight, and is only a conduit for them to get some attention, whether it's co-opting from their achievements, their successes, which ultimately they will steal,
Mm.
um, and completely destroy in the end, because they can't subsist on just someone having something that that isn't theirs. So ultimately, the person is reduced to nothing. That's the end game, to complete dehumanization. So this is a critical piece in making sure that someone, and it's sort of like what Gabor Mate, who's a pioneer in trauma treatment, said: the essence of trauma really is a loss of self. And so the narcissist is very deliberately and strategic driven to make sure that they break down the person so that they are left with nothing.
Yeah. And I know that like a victim can go the way we've been talking about, which is I gave up photography. I gave up my
Mhm.
bye-bye. Thank you for that part. What else would you like to take off of me, right? But then there's the
Mhm.
other part for me, and I know it's for others too, is they said I couldn't, and so I fucking did. And I'm sorry,
Mhm.
it's my video, but it is
Mhm.
I pushed out, and the last thing
Yeah.
my father said, which was 2 years ago, right before my book came out, "You're writing a book?
Mhm.
Who the hell would read your book? You never even wrote a term paper." And I said, "Really? Watch me." Like that moved me into a place
Yeah.
empowerment. And I think
Right.
wouldn't have happened had the trauma not been healed, right?
Mm.
I think if I had
Yeah.
been back where I was much more under control of my parents and what they said, and obviously it did wound me. I had to heal that stuff. But now it empowers me. Yeah, go ahead, dare me.
Mhm.
I'll take any challenge and I'll push it past that. So there's a
Yeah.
point, I think, in recovery where we do take back these things, right? We might
Yes.
slowly, and it might just be, okay, I'll go take a picture, or I'll start here. But like when
Yeah.
someone pushes me and says, yeah, good luck with that, I'm like, yeah, watch me. And
Mhm.
that's the ultimate in healing is I pushed past the lies.
Right. Right.
I push past it and it means nothing. It's like a mosquito buzzing around my head. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
tell it to people because it shows how, venomous that kind of comment was. The last thing you want me to remember is that really,
Yeah.
you know what? It's okay because it
Yeah.
makes who I am. And I wouldn't have done that. Do you have people like that again, once they're through the trauma, they take back their power?
Yes, I mean, I think that is part of the thriving that follows remembrance and mourning. I think, though, to get there is grueling because the notion that another would be sadistically and vindictively driven to tear you down, to basically destroy you, is a very surreal um, idea. It doesn't align with our sense of humanity. We don't, and this is something you and I talk about a lot. It relates to the whole premise of human evil and having to really accept that someone that you love, someone that you trusted, that you allowed into your life was from the get go intent on tearing you down, reducing you to nothing, and robbing you of whatever it is that embodied who you are,
Mhm.
essentially. And so, before you could even try to reclaim, and not all things can be reclaimed, there is such a prolonged descent into this dark space
Mhm.
of mourning. And there is a lot of trapped grief and also a lot of trapped rage. People really struggle with this. It's like coming out of a cult, because it's very terrifying to expand one's consciousness to be inclusive of human evil, to see that people actually will lie and backstab, deceive. I mean, gossiping, also the way there is the divide and conquer, the triangulation, using other people to tear you down, to destroy your reputation behind your back. These things actually happen. And yet, I had this I wrote a piece, The Gaslighting Friend, with a woman I was friends with who was like this shaman, healer, who would backstab me behind my back but would tell me she was so concerned about my empowerment and me with my codependency. I'm thinking she's aligned with me, not seeing that boundaries are being crossed until I finally woke up and told her, my power is none of your fucking business.
Mhm.
My relationship to who I am is between me and God, because I do believe in God. But essentially, it comes down to your reclamation with yourself and really those people who are trusted allies. And so, feeding off of the other person's need to feel that they are encouraged and that the narcissist will pretend to want you to achieve or want you to
Mhm.
go after what you want. Um, it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's all about getting you to a point where you actually trust, And so that when you are, by the time you're blindsided, you are so bewildered that your mind scrambles to figure out how this could have possibly have happened, and it must be a big misunderstanding. And then it just is the constant breakdown. So some people get out sooner than others. I mean, some people have allies who see it. A lot of people do not see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the reclamation piece after the mourning, after the complete and utter breakdown, and the rebuilding of one's worldview, um, and a code of conduct to know how to protect oneself in the world, then one can reclaim their ambitions.
Mhm.
Because most people, when they come out of these relationships, are terrified. You know, they have a hard time engaging with others. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of activation. You know, the amygdala is on overdrive, the brain is hijacked. Um, they're not differentiating the past from the present. So even just feeling safe, and then they're being hoovered, you know, constantly. And so until they can really detach with an axe and break away, it's very difficult then to begin to pivot and look at rebuilding one's sense of self, one's identity, and exhuming those gifts, those talents, those achievements that are inherent and that have been dormant, you know, for so long.
And after this kind of betrayal, where you learn that someone has deliberately done these things, it's so hard to trust again, right? So I think
Yeah,
trust is part of this picture of recovery. Is, you know what? I think I can play the piano again. You know, it's trusting
yeah,
your, and then trusting again, trusting self first before we even open the door to trusting others, because if we don't trust ourselves, we can't trust another. And so,
hmm,
you know, just having that, the betrayal really, again, it ebbs that away. We might be talking about playing the guitar and cooking and other things that were taken from,
yeah,
but the truth was it's hardcore in the emotions, in the
yeah,
of trust, and, you know, again, the anger, the things that we're going to carry from how dare they, who does this, and all of
right.
the sort of messages that we get. Is there something else that we're missing here to close out today? What else should
Well,
we?
I think what you just said is really important in terms of sharing. And I had this conversation with a client years ago who was a second generation Holocaust survivor, and she was an artist. And in her history, obviously severe generational trauma, a lot of the art, everything that her family worked for was taken. So she became very insular with her art. We talked about the need to share art. You
Mm,
know, if you cook, you want to share a meal. If you want to play music with people. Um, Even you and I, what we're doing, sharing this and allowing others in. I mean, when I was, growing up, when I had acting taken from me, just kind of pulled away from me, I became very insular and became a selective mute in a lot of ways. I really had to work to get my voice back. So I think a big piece of it is to try to trust again so you can share your gifts. So you're not just in a bubble
yeah.
hiding from the world. And that is a huge um, undertaking
Mhm,
for survivors of narcissistic abuse.
mhm,
Um, the impulse to protect the self, it goes through, I think, a stage where there's an extreme need to make sure that they are not harmed again.
mhm,
But, and I said this to someone I was talking about who's dealing with the aftermath of betrayal, you you can't love and not risk being betrayed. That's the paradox.
mhm,
So at some point, one has to have the courage to go out there and also to trust that if they encounter someone who is maneuvering in a way and that is duplicitous, and they're hard to detect, even for the best of us who
Mhm.
who have been there, and who have like just made this into a huge undertaking, understanding the machinations of narc abuse and the pathology. They could be very polished, very refined, but at some point you have to say, look, I have to share this. I can't live in isolation with who I am for the rest of my life. And that's the pivotal step, I think.
This was so helpful. I love having this discussion because everybody has had something taken away. And I think
Hmm.
help them feel like they're not alone, and see that it is one of the things that narcissists do. And that kind of just like validates, okay, it's not just me. I'm not an artist, or it's taking
Hmm.
power to understand you're not alone. And this was done to them. This was done
Yeah.
to you and I. This was done to all of our clients. And so
Hmm.
to know that they're not alone is important here. So tell me, I know you are in Canada now because you were in New
Hmm.
York. So tell my audience how they can reach you and find out more about you, because you've got your groups in Canada and you do private
Hmm.
coaching. Tell the audience a little bit about how to reach you.
Okay, well, I would love to hear from you. I can be reached at my website at sheritherapist.com. That's one word. And all my information is listed on my website. I also have a blog on Medium, where I have a multiplicity of articles, but many of my articles are about recovery from narcissistic abuse. And so I'd love to share my work with you.
And believe me, everybody, if you have not read her work, you're missing something. She is brilliant. I was rereading this article this morning and I'm like, man, this should be in like the New York Times. It is so good and so
Thank
professional.
you.
And I really appreciate all the work that you give to the community. You also blog for us, and we've got
Yes.
your blogs on my site. So
Hmm.
grateful for that contribution,
Hmm.
because it makes us a better blog for the world. Thank you. Well, this
Thank
is
you, Tracy.
Trace. Sheri, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to see you, as always.
Well, I hope this triggered you a little bit to say that happened to me too, or there's that camp of me giving up my photography and never doing it again, or the camp of me going, screw you, I'm going to fight back and I'm going to publish my books and I'm going to push past the negative thoughts that the narcissists have put into my head. It took me years. Please don't think this was I just fixed myself. Like, I was in therapy for a very long time, working through the trauma. And it wasn't just the marriage trauma, the relationship trauma. It was my childhood messages and the programming that I had to push past. So this is Tracy Malone. If you were looking for resources on narcissistic abuse, go to my website, narcissistabusesupport.com. We've got pages and pages and so many different agencies and groups and all kinds of things that you can find to help yourself. Also, I am a coach. So if you are in need of help and you want to just push past or ask questions or get direction, I'm here for you. So follow the link down below and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you.